I'm a little bit embarrassed to admit this, but the night that I made the speech at National Airport, I didn't even talk about general strike. I had talked about a general strike earlier in the week, but I talked about like the real dangers of the government shutdown, and it kind of went viral, and people oftentimes conflate that speech with the general strike speech. Anyway, so I have to admit, I, being, just a little teeny union president, went online and read the comments on social media on the Now This post. And so some of the comments were things like, well, I couldn't really pay attention to what she was saying because can you believe her eyeshadow? Like, it's so 1990s. And I would go to these pages and it was like, feminist, progressive woman. And I'm like, hello.
Yeah, the comments can be brutal. First of all, as per the interest in Princess Diana and the crown, 90s eyeshadow is in. First and foremost.
Okay, then. So I was totally in. Yay. So those were compliments. Second
of all, you always look amazing. I think part of the appeal. It's a difficult place to be in, right? As a progressive woman, where you can you have to kind of recognize that there is a visual component to your presentation, and that you can get people in the door on a certain level by, being appealing in a certain way, but also not wanting to be limited to being perceived in that way, and it's a real double-edged sword. So
yeah. You know what? This is what I think. I think if you're a woman, they're going to comment on your appearance no matter what. And I feel like the more that you can just sort of erase some of that and erase the roadblocks to what you're saying, the better off you are. And what I find is that especially, actually, flight attendants train me in this way. Of course, my real training is representing flight attendants. And so it mattered to them how I was appearing. So the first couple times when I was union president and I would appear on TV, they'd be like, oh, she looked great, and little did they know, of course, when I started flying, I was from Oregon. I was like, I grew up sort of in this granola world, and I was completely opposed to wearing makeup. And so I went out and I actually took a makeup class when I became the union president. I'm like, oh my God, they're all going to expect me to look perfect. So sure enough, I took the makeup class. I did the first few TV interviews, and this is all people said, like, oh, she looked great. And I'm like, did you listen to a thing I said? But what I found was that it's like I had to get through that, and then they could hear what I was saying. And so I just feel like it's just like removing the roadblocks to that, right?
Yeah,
just remove as many roadblocks as you can. Get in the room and remove as many roadblocks as you can.
It's also been said that I look like I'm about to solve a mystery involving a handkerchief.
Virgil, I find you sort of mysteriously sexy. Can I say
oh my
that?
God. Yeah, you can say that. Oh, this is already shaping up to be the best interview that we've ever done on this show.
Virgil's turning colors.
Should we sink in?
He's the same colors as Mike now. his bright red microphone.
Come on.
See, you've got the mic all synced up for this interview. It's perfect.
All right, should we? You want to sink in, and I'll do the intro,
Sure.
and then please put your seat backs to the upright position. And get ready for takeoff. Because today's guest is a flight attendant and international president of the Association of Flight Attendants-CWA, Sara Nelson.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And thank you so much for that introduction, Virgil. I have never seen you this flustered.
I don't know what to tell you.
I'm genuinely charmed and stunned by how flustered Virgil is in this moment.
Flustered. Just say another thing, Brie.
Okay, all right. I'll spare you, my friend. Sarah, everybody wants to talk to you right now, particularly everybody on the left, because so many of us have such a piss poor, for lack of a better word, embarrassing education when it comes to unions, organizing, and what can be done. And in this moment, in the wake of the Democratic primary and the general election, when the progressive candidates obviously didn't make it through, a lot of folks are wondering what power we have in the midst of this crisis to make the world better. And you, as one of the most visible and senior members of a major union, president of a major union, have become someone that people are looking to. So can you start by telling us a little bit about your background and how you got into this position? And then we'll talk a little bit more about the arrows in your quiver, as Nancy Pelosi put it.
To use another flight metaphor.
Well, first of all, saying that I'm senior is super exciting because in aviation, we negotiated that seniority list in 1946, and that was the basis of beating back all the discriminatory practices that had flight attendants quit when they were age 30, have to step on a weight scale until 1993.
Wow.
You couldn't you couldn't be a man, you couldn't be married, you couldn't have kids, all of these things. Anyway, that seniority list in 1946 was the basis for all of those discriminatory fights, because for the first time, we had the basis to say that, you couldn't, managers couldn't try to force flight attendants to have to trade sex for schedules. And it was the basis for fighting all the ageist efforts, and to recognize that with maturity comes actual experience that is valuable. And so I love that you said that I'm senior. That is great. Because in the aviation industry, because we changed this into a career that anyone with the heart of a flight attendant could have, people stay a long time.
Well,
So
I certainly
seniority is everything.
I certainly didn't mean chronologically senior. I certainly just meant in terms of power and like hierarchy and yes, experience.
No, I get it. I actually love the women who taught me about doing this work. And they really, they built a union that really didn't have any respect from anyone from the outside. I mean, we built that respect for ourselves, and we scrapped it out. And I didn't really understand what sexism was even until I became a union president. And I remember a very senior flight attendant taking me to the side my first week on the job. And she said, listen, management thinks of us as their wives or their mistresses. And in either case, they hold us in contempt. Your only place of worth is with your fellow flying partners. And if you wear your union pin and we stick together, there's nothing we can't accomplish. And that was a lot to take for a 23-year-old fresh out of company training, let me just tell you. But those words really, still ring in my head today. And when I started to do the union work and got to the bargaining table, I understood exactly what she meant. And so it is an extraordinary thing that we were able to recognize by the time of the government shutdown that, planes don't take off if pilots don't fly them, but they also don't take off if flight attendants don't staff them. And that's because my union made sure that the government certified our jobs and made sure that there were a minimum of flight attendants on that plane. And, people can make all the jokes in the world that they want, but we carved out this role as aviation's first responders. And we were able to show that, women who have been traditionally marginalized or objectified have real power at work. And so that turns on its head sort of the idea of who has power in this country. And when it comes down to it, it's really labor of all kinds has power. And if we think about who we think comes from central casting and unions today, you think about the mine workers, for example. But the mine workers, when they formed their union, they were immigrants from all over this world. And they were treated as though their lives meant nothing. In fact, the donkeys that carried the coal that they loaded up meant more than their own lives. The companies treated those donkeys with more preciousness than the lives of those miners. And so it's always been workers joining together and finding out that when we come together and we refuse to give our labor to a system that's going to exploit us, that's when we have enough power to move forward, make real demands, and make real gains.